Hi, this is Andy Collin from Growing Up Aspen Adventures of the Unsupervised. I'm here with Chris Pomeroy and Heath Kizzier. Heath um, came into Aspen High in his senior year and graduated. Moved on, went into acting. Was in Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner. Did 3 years in Young and Restless, and now runs and owns Four Oaks Farms. So let's catch up with Heath and hear his adventure. So I don't know, Chris, if you knew Heath that much, but Heath, you have a very interesting perspective on the Aspen thing, because you came in, you bounced around, and then you came in, so you have like interesting eyes into the culture and the stuff that we grew up with, like that what Chris and I talked about in our book.
Right.
So I feel like it's interesting to get someone's perspective who tapped in and became part of that a little bit. You know what I mean? I felt like too in high school it was interesting because although you were on the football team, you seemed like you were really cool. You weren't into the show off, big jock kind of person. You had sort of more of you sort of felt more like more mature than a lot of the kids for some reason. You know what I mean? And I seeing you interact kind of made me feel like, okay, this is, you kind of had something behind you and I just didn't know what it was. But meeting you in the reunion, it was really cool to hear your story.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your journey before and into Aspen.
It was a pretty long journey, actually. So, and kind of as a reminder, I don't remember a whole lot of people and a whole lot of places in Aspen because I was in 4 different high schools. And so I kind of had a small group. And so anyway, I was I'll step way back for a minute. So split parents, and so I moved around with them and ended up in Colorado with my dad and was there for quite a long time in the horse world and doing all that. And then I got to the size where he wanted to fight me instead of beat me. So then somehow I ended up with my mom in South Dakota, and ensued multiple more high schools and school changes and this and that. And ultimately I was a good student, but I went to so many schools that I had to change mid-semesters. And so I ended up, for many of my classes, I ended up doing office duty, answering phones in the office because my classes wouldn't mesh up until the next semester. And so I got, A's and B's and I was fine. And I don't ever remember studying.
Right.
But school just wasn't my thing. And so I actually quit school after my junior year. And I got a job in Minneapolis working at the big theater there. At the time I wanted to be stage lighting. That was my thing, because I was working at the Civic Center and doing all that kind of thing. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I got this job in Minnesota. And of course, my family was up in arms. I was quitting school, can't do that. Of course, everybody huddled up. And so I get a call from my uncle who lived in Aspen or Snowmass at the time. And he called and he said, "Hey, so what do you think about moving to Aspen, finishing school? I'll help you find a place and I'll help you find a job. And you can finish school." And I kind of thought about it, and I'd never been there. And went, "Well, all right, that sounds interesting." And he said, "Well, there's one problem. is I know you're going to want to play football, and if you want to play football, you have to be here tomorrow. Oh, okay. So, threw everything in the back of the truck, and I drove to Aspen, and that's how I got there.
Wow.
Aspen from Minneapolis in a day. Wow, that's a pretty good trip.
Yeah.
So what did you drive? What did you come with in? I
had a 1972 blue and white Chevy pickup.
Oh, pickup. All right.
It was
you fit right in.
Yeah. So, and at the time I didn't have much. I think I literally just brought a duffel bag, and that's kind of all I had. And so got is that me?
So it was kind of like less detail. You just had your bags and
yeah, it was, kind of at that age, just I spent a lot of years kind of letting life lead me instead of leading life. And I just was very fortunate that it led me in a fairly good direction, because I think we were talking at the reunion. I'm blessed that somehow going to that many schools that I didn't just go down the wrong road, and right. it could have been very, very easy to take that path. And so I'm very fortunate.
Well, it also seems like every individual has a seed that they start with, and you definitely seem to have and it could be because of the situation you grew up with or whatever, but you seem to have a very not tempered, but looking at something and seeing it before you make a decision on what you're doing, right. In a sense, right. You know what I mean?
Well, it was kind of funny because, and we haven't really gotten there yet, but so my senior year, I've got my own apartment there in Aspen, and so of course my place was where everybody wanted to hang out because I was alone, and they ultimately started calling me the governor, simply because, like a governor on a car, it would only let you go so far and so fast.
Right.
And so as soon as things would start to get out of control, I was like, nope, we're not doing that. Nope. The float mistake notwithstanding.
Yes, exactly. But that's the kind of stuff that I think it was nice to see that you were like us, but you also had that ability to kind of go, whoa, wait a minute, that's, as opposed to kids just being kids and being crazy.
Well, now wait a minute, we need to back up.
Yeah.
What was the float mistake?
Oh, that was
it was so very funny. So we had the reunion last month, and Little Simple, one of our classmates, wrote an article in the paper, and he was telling the float story. So the float story pushing way into Aspen. So it's homecoming, and all the classes make a float for homecoming, and then there's a parade and this whole thing. And so in our wisdom, the seniors, we're at somebody's house and we're building our float, and our float is pretty pathetic. It's awful. And we're, of course, having a beer and doing our thing, and somebody gets the idea that, well, the sophomores are going to knock it out of the park. They're going to kill it with their float, because we just knew that. And so somebody had the idea that, well, let's go just take the sophomores down just a notch. And we were going to go do a little shenanigan to the sophomore float. Well, the float where they were building their float was at Justin's house, and Justin's house was, and I don't recall what the canyons are called and the roads and stuff, but anyway, it's down this big steep canyon down by the river.
Just Justin Aldifer?
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be underneath, I think, the Maroon Creek Bridge.
There was a bridge there, yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we get down there, and we've got paint and we're gonna tag it. And it's built on, I believe it was Justin's Jeep, but they've built it around the Jeep. And of course it's tissue paper and everything. And so a couple of us are on one side, a couple of us are on the other side, and I'm not going to name names, but somehow somebody was spray painting and put a lighter under the flame, under the paint.
Yeah. Burn the float. I remember
and
that.
It went down like that. It was toast in a heartbeat. And it's really close to this big garage that they had. And within a minute, the fire department's on their way. This is homecoming, so it's wintertime. So we of course bolt, and we get up to the bridge, and we're watching things go down. And because it's wintertime, the fire truck gets stuck and starts slipping down the road, that steep road, and they can't take the corner. And so the truck gets banged up, the truck gets stuck. Of course, the fire's out by the time anybody gets up there with the hose. Well, we're panicked, me and this group of guys, and we're up on the bridge and we're watching this go down, and we see the truck slip off the road. Now we panic, and so we head to my house, and we're sitting in there just terrified, and we've really screwed up, and we make this pact that we're not going to say anything, and so we get to school the next day, and everybody's now knows, everybody in the school knows what's happened, and people are coming up to me and this group, and they're all, "Hey, I heard you did it." No, we didn't. I didn't do it. Mm-mm. And so it's big hubbub all day long. And at the end of the day, the principal calls a school-wide meeting, and standing up there, in my memory, there's a couple of cops with him. And part of the story that I forgot, the principal was called that night, and he was hiking down that road. He slipped and he broke his ankle. So it's just going sideways. So he's up there, he's in his cast, and he's telling the school, if by the end of the day somebody doesn't fess up, these guys are going to go and they're going to start an investigation, and it's going to become a big deal. And trust me, you guys are high schoolers. They're going to figure it out real fast on who did this. And so they released the auditorium, and we go down, and I'm down in the locker room, sitting in front of my locker, getting ready for football. And I'm just sitting there, just elbows on my knees, just going, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then over the speaker says, okay, somebody's confessed, so you're okay. And now I know one of our guys have broken. And so I get dressed and I go up into the principal's office, and he's there across from one of the guys. And I just kind of poke my head in, and he's on the phone. The guy's talking to the other guy's dad, I think. And I just kind of nod and go sit next to him. So that's the float story.
So you took the heat before they nailed you.
Yeah.
Well, that's the guilt by association.
Yeah, the oldest trick in the book.
So you were wanting to do stage stuff. Did you do the play with Brad Moore? Were you in?
No, I wasn't doing it in school. At the time, one of my jobs, I was working at the Wheeler, and I was doing backstage stuff there, and not doing lighting there. I was doing more just grip, schleppy stuff. But that was my nighttime thing. I was more football and other stuff in school. So
okay.
And I didn't have the acting bug at all at that time.
Thanks for listening. The authors of Growing Up Aspen would like to thank you, and would like to also thank the Aspen Times and the Aspen Daily News for giving us materials for our book, Growing Up Aspen, Adventures of the Unsupervised, which you can get at twistandturnpress.com and any local bookstore. Thanks.